My name is Kieran Holmes. I'm a tax advisor, but I work in the international sphere, and I've been helping governments improve their tax systems for 28 years. I'm now working as the Commissioner General of Burundi. I'm the only expatriate in the government, and that was the condition that was imposed by the donors when they were proposing the assistance to the government of Burundi. We inherited a very bad situation from the previous administration with widespread exemptions. Tax exemptions in Burundi are very, very high, over 100 billion a year in total. It's a lot of money, and it's not money, in my view, that's well spent, because it's a loss to the exchequer without a recurrent and quantifiable benefit. So the strategy that I've been pursuing and the strategy that I've been advising the government to undertake is to broaden the tax base, reduce the tax rates as much as possible, but keep exemptions and the like and other incentives as low as possible as well. We've brought the tax rate down this year from 35% to a maximum of 30%, which is the corporate rate, and the maximum personal rate. We have an MOU between DFID and the government of Burundi, which provides £11 million of assistance. But we expect to spend more than that. So one of the issues that I'm currently facing is that we have something of a resource challenge at the moment as we go forward, but I think we're okay for 2013. The most important thing is the recurrent expenditure for the Revenue Authority that is provided by the government. And the government provides us with revenues. We try and keep our costs below 2.5% of revenue that we're going to collect. Reforms of this type, they take a big investment in both in treasure and in blood, sweat and tears, but they're all extremely worthwhile, and they're very, very cost effective. I like to tell people, when I worked in Rwanda, DFID contributed about £24 million to the creation of the Rwanda Revenue Authority over a 12-year period. But the Rwanda Revenue Authority collects £24 million every 2 weeks now, 2.5 weeks. So that's, you can see immediately the kind of investment that you're talking about, a 12-year period coming back every 2 weeks in terms of revenue. And it's the gift that keeps on giving, because it continues to produce revenue for the state long after the intervention has ceased. Before the Revenue Authority was created, the state was bringing in around 300 billion Burundi francs in revenue. Now, going forward in the coming year, in 2013, we expect to bring in more than 615 billion Burundi francs. So we've doubled the revenue, more than doubled the revenue in essentially a 3-year period. And we expect to double the revenue again in the forthcoming 5 years, from 600 to 1.2 trillion. So these are figures which are, they're quite good for a small, poor country, post-conflict state, and of course they're in terms of volume and value, they're far greater than what international development could ever possibly wish to deliver anyway. So you can see that it's literally the government pulling itself up by its own bootstraps. We send people out on audits, and we send them out on a range of audits. They go out and they do single issue audits, they do comprehensive audits, they do single tax audits, and we try and present a range of different audits to the taxpayers so that to make sure that they don't know what to expect, if you like, in the sense that there's an element of surprise involved as well. We like to send auditors out in teams. We like to make sure that they're monitored by audit managers, and we like to make sure we get audit reports from them every week. Corruption is anathema to any effective tax administration. You have to fight it, and you have to fight it not only comprehensively, but you have to fight it on a daily, weekly, hourly basis even. We have a code of conduct for our staff, which they have to sign, and we also ask them to give a list of their assets, which we look at and see if there's any growth in their assets. Of course, if they misrepresent their assets, either understate them or overstate them, then that's a dismissal offence as well. So one of the big advantages of a revenue authority is that you're one step removed from the civil service. You're not fully private, but you're not fully public either. And we therefore have flexibility of hiring and firing staff, and we have fired staff for corruption. We've fired commissioners, and we've fired directors as well as ordinary staff, and we will continue to do that because it's a never-ending battle. The challenge of post-conflict states is that not everybody can be joined, not everybody in the government can initially be joined up. Resources are weak, and people are coming from a very bad place, and they don't always see the advantages of doing something as arcane as setting up a revenue administration. So that's something that you have to factor into your thinking when you design these projects. But what I have found is that people, whether from post-conflict or otherwise, particularly in Africa, there are always reformers within the government. There are always people who want to do the right thing and who want to build the state. And collecting revenues is an essential part of building the state. And building the state is an essential part of creating the correct environment for business growth and business development, and that in turn brings jobs, and that in turn brings income, and that in turn lifts people out of poverty. Of course, my job is to collect the revenue in a efficient and effective way and deliver it to the state. And I don't have control, because I'm not the Minister of Finance, so I don't have control over how it's spent. But what I can say to you is that I think the revenue is being spent wisely. I think the government did not, obviously it had a revenue deficiency, so it has more demands on it than it has revenue. So in those circumstances, you would expect that the revenue would be well spent. Transparency is a key factor for me, and as I say, we knock down all the walls. We have any walls that we have internally in the offices are glass walls where you can see people working. So it's very much like these newspaper offices here today. It's everything that's fully open plan. From the very moment that I arrived in Burundi, I've insisted on publishing our collection results. So every month we publish the taxes we collect. And we publish them in a detailed way by comparison with the same month in the previous year. So we can show the taxpayers exactly how much money is being collected and what is being delivered to the state. People are very much engaging with us on the reform agenda, and it's actually very heartening to see. There's quite a vibrant media in Burundi, and I'm forever in the media, of course, but so is the OBR, the reform agenda. People are asking questions, people are making comments, people are saying, the whole question of how should a nation tax itself is on the agenda, which is very healthy in my opinion, because it's what democracy is all about. The government of Burundi is to be commended for the fact that they brought in they had the courage to bring in an expatriate. And His Excellency the President has said many times that he thinks that for this initial period that a Burundian could not have done the job. And I think that's the whole point of aid and international development, is that it brings in the expertise that's not readily available within the country. But the way to approach it is you have to create the expertise, because everything I do has got to be sustainable. So when I walk away, there's got to be an institution that can run itself, and there's got to be somebody at the head of that institution who can run the institution. And that's my objective. But they say the mark of good management is what happens when you're away. And I've been monitoring my staff and their work, and they're working very, very well. I have to say, I'm very impressed by how they're working while I've been away, because I've been away for almost 4 weeks now. And the revenue is still rolling in, things are being done, people are working, and it's very heartening to see that. There is a specific skill set. You have to be completely unreasonable. And once you're completely unreasonable, well, there is a discipline, there's a financial discipline to revenue collection. And there are certain tried, true and tested means of bringing in revenues for the state. And there are ways of doing it right and there are ways of doing it wrong. You have to know how to do it right, and you have to focus on the end result, and you have to be sure that you deliver a good service to the client, which is of course the country in which you're working, and that's what I try and do. You know, this is the first time I've had to have armed escorts when doing what I'm doing, but you do have to have an almost cavalier approach, in the sense that you know, when I started with ODA, which was the predecessor to DFID, they told us, you know, the first thing you have to learn is that you have to work yourself out of a job. And that's the mindset you have to use when you take on these positions, is that if the country, if it all goes wrong, or if people don't do as you want them to do in the best way possible for the country, you have to be prepared to walk away. And that of course has financial consequences as well as everything. Personal consequences, you know, you lose your home because I live in these countries. So, but you have to be prepared to do that in order to make it work. And that's the ultimate thing. You have to be able to say, well, if this doesn't work, then I'll find something else to do, and be prepared to walk away.